Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Tonight we're talking about the most important relationship. The most important relationship you'll ever have. The most important, the pinnacle, the cornerstone relationship that you'll have in your life. You know, I'm going to tell you a secret because a lot of people don't know this. And sometimes it takes people lifetimes to figure it out. And I want to go on and get past the guesswork tonight. I want to inform my listeners and help you embrace this true reality. You know, the most important relationship that you have in your life is with yourself.
This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy.
I know it sounds crazy because it seems so selfish, really. It seems so unhumble of a comment to make that the most important relationship you'll have in the whole world at the whole time in this whole lifetime of yours is with yourself. Who'd have thunk it, really? You know, it's interesting because I've realized that for a long period of time, but it wasn't until recently, the last few years, that I realized that we as human beings treat others directly related to how we treat ourselves. So we probably heard about how people can be your mirror. They can mirror you, you know, like a mirror on the wall. They can mirror you, mirror your actions, your personality. Think about it. I mean, think about when you walk down the street and you say hi to somebody or you look at somebody, and the way that you speak to them directly relates to how they speak to you, right? Try it out. You do this sometime because this is a really fun activity. This is what I call like a scientific, social, really, experiment. Because, like, think about it. When you walk down the street and you see someone walking towards you and you're walking toward them, what is your reaction usually? Sometimes people's reaction is to look down and act like, say nothing and keep walking. Some people's reaction is to say, hey. Other people have a reaction of nodding up and down, their head nodding, yeah. Some people might say, hey, how you doing? Some people might say hello. Some people might wave. And if you think about it, for the most part, and I'm not saying all the time, because it doesn't work all the time, because some people are more outgoing, some people are extremely introvert, and some people don't speak to anybody. But for the most part, if you walk down the street and you see someone and you say, hey, how you doing? They're usually going to respond back with good. How about you? If you walk down the street and you see someone and you say hi, they'll normally say hi. It even is about inflection and direction. So if you kind of like go, hey, they'll be like, hey. It's so funny. What we give, and we get what we give. And not all the time. Now, I'm not saying all the time because sometimes there are jackasses in this world, okay? Sometimes there are people in a totally different world. Some people are going through a lot of stress and strain. You don't even know it. Other people got a lot of stuff going on in their mind. And some people just aren't nice at all. Ever. And the thing is that for the most part, though, when people are open and receptive and they don't have a huge moat or wall up, they have a tendency of mirroring others. And it's interesting because what we give off usually is a direct reflection to what we get back. And what I mean by that is that when we are usually nice and sensitive and honestly compassionate, we usually get something similar in return. It's always interesting to me. And it's funny because when we realize that we are a direct reflection, we start to begin to realize how important it is to be around solid reflections, but yet to look at ourselves in the mirror and figure out what about ourselves may we want to change or work on or expose. You know, a lot of times We are very good at certain things, and there's certain things, however, that we as individuals, individual aspects of ourselves, that we wish to change or modify. You know, it's interesting. The more authentic you become, the more real you become, the more honest you become, the more truthful you become, the less you care about changing physical things about yourself. And the more a spiritual component becomes very and extremely important. And it's interesting how the more spiritual and the more defined and the more thoughtful and the more inner elegance you have. I like that word, inner elegance. The more inner elegance you have, you begin to want to spend time with other people who have that same inner elegance. And it's interesting, when you're around people who don't have that, your stomach might start churning. Maybe you're not feeling so good. You begin to internalize things because you realize and you're feeling what is coming off from that person, whether it's a lot of anger, frustration, fighting, like the fight or flight mechanism, or better, just a bully. And there's some people out there that have always gotten their way no matter what. They've gotten their way no matter what, no matter how many people they had to walk on, no matter how many people they had to fight. They got their way no matter what. And these people are the real most difficult people to deal with because, you know what? They don't ever have to deal with anybody. It's always their way or the highway. And I've realized in life when I've come against some of these people and I've had to deal with them, I've realized that it's better to go the opposite direction. You learn a lot about an organization and a team when you meet the head team member. You learn a lot because that person can be very genuine or compassionate, or that person might not. And when you realize maybe somebody that you've been working with or working for a period of time does not have the same value system as you, you begin to reflect. And I believe now more than ever, as we as individuals, as we get to know ourselves even more deep, we get to understand ourselves. We take a real look in the mirror. We take a real look within inside. We meditate. We think. We have a lot of quiet time. As we do that, we realize the things that we will not accept in our life. The things we will not accept. We no longer will accept things that maybe we would in the past. Because we just can't. Because we can't look ourselves in the mirror and allow that to be. It's interesting because when we realize that the most important relationship we have with ourselves, when we realize that bedrock of thought process, when we realize that philosophy, when we understand that perspective in life, because it is so true. When we begin to understand that and to comprehend the impact that has on our life, we begin to realize that personal time is some of the most important time we have. You know, when we were younger, and for most of us even today, the concept of being alone is frightful. It's scary. A lot of people don't like it. They'd rather be with absolutely anybody else but themselves. Oh, God, please, God. Please, God, I'll go all around the universe telling everybody, not to do this, not to do that, as long as I don't have to be by myself. And there's a lot of people that you know that can't stay out of a relationship. They go from one relationship to another. None of them very good relationships because they haven't worked on themselves, right? Okay. Fundamentally, the bedrock of all relationships is based on ourselves. They don't want to work on themselves. They don't want to look at themselves. They don't want to take the responsibility for themselves. They don't want to accept the blame for what happened because part of it is theirs. It's not all theirs, but part of it is. And instead of looking through all this baggage and all this stuff, instead, what do? We push it under the rug. Oh, it was her fault or it was his fault and they didn't get me. They didn't understand me, really. It was all their fault. And I have friends that have gone through one divorce and it ends up working out. The second marriage ends up working out amazing and they've been married for 25 years and it's all great. But sometimes that is not the way it rolls. Sometimes the first divorce happens, they meet a new person, they get married in a year and a half, and the second divorce isn't that much later after. Because they have problems in the marriage, and you sit there and you go, why? This person you said was the absolute opposite of everything that your wife was. Why are you having problems? And you know what it comes down to is not that there's something really necessarily wrong with the other person, but it's the personal work that was never looked at or addressed during the first marriage, in between, and before the second. Because a lot of times, isn't it true that we find that, oh, it's got to be them. It's got to be them who is causing the problems. It really can't be me. It really can't be. It's really got to be their problems. And, you know, some of us actually owe up to the fact that it might be a balanced problem situation where there's problems on both sides, and we have to accept the fact that none of us are perfect. And that's awesome. But we have to actually work on those issues. And we're going to talk more about what these issues are, what the personal work is that we have to do. But for right now, let's talk about the choices we make. You know, the choices we make directly reflect to how we feel about ourselves. So the choices that we make directly reflect to how we see ourselves. So let me give you a good example, and I know that some of you can understand where I come from. We have that self-esteem, sometimes that self-esteem issue, and I think that that's a common issue, more common than a lot of people would like to let on, the self-esteem. The self-belief, really. Believing in the self, recognizing the value in self, and maybe counterparting that to society versus money versus career, and extrapolate that based on what you're helping, who you're helping, and what are you doing in society. And I think a lot of times when people do a lot of charity work, and I understand this deeply, when people do a lot of charity work, because I've done a lot of charity work, and I pride myself in doing charity work. I pride myself in doing things for people and helping them. However, in this day and age in society, it seems that money is the focal point, right? Money is the focal point in which at least the TV and other media tells us that based on how much money we have is really, honestly, how much self-belief we should have in ourselves. I mean, think about it. I mean, poor Mother Teresa. I mean, you know, thank God she had her head on her shoulders. I mean, most of us would already have taken ourselves out by now because we've done all this good in society, but yet it doesn't show and it doesn't equate to how society defines success. And that directly relates back to what? Our self-esteem. And so sometimes when we have a low self-esteem, possibly based on a bullshit counter, okay, so think about it. So something that's not true. And I'm not saying that money is not important. And I'm not saying that you don't need money to live in this world, okay? I get it. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that we usually define worth by money. And I'll give you some examples of when people talk about people that have a lot of money, they say that they're rich. Oh, they're wealthy. They're rich and wealthy. What do those words mean to you? What does rich and wealthy mean to you? And why do we use those words to define people who have a lot of paper money? And it's interesting because I see rich in a different way. Because I have to, because I do a lot of charity work, because I give back to society, because I don't receive a lot of money for the work that I do. And a lot of that might be because of some of the choices that I make. And let me give you an example of some of the choices I make. First off, I see a percentage of my clients for free. I do that because some of them cannot afford it. And it might not necessarily be for free, but it might be for $20. And I do that because I know that they need help. They need to get on their feet. And if I didn't help them, they don't have Medicaid or Medicare, and they wouldn't get any help. And I like assisting people, but at the same time, those are some of the choices I make. And to me, that's a positive choice. To me, that's a healthy choice. But I also make other choices in my life that aren't so healthy. And let me explain those right now. I think you may understand. When you go into a business situation and there are people that are maybe more cunning than you, maybe more crafty than you, because they have a lot more practice of beating people up and getting what they want out of them. And you walk in the room, good person, thoughtful, compassionate, not somebody that bullies and not somebody that beats other people up. You might give in to what the bully is requesting. Just because you don't want to have a fight, just because you don't like confrontation. How many of us have made a choice based on the fact that we do not want confrontation? How many? Raise your hands right now. Raise your hands right now. If you don't like confrontation and you've agreed to bullshit crap in the past because you didn't want to deal with it, or better yet, you just put it off. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. Oh my God, I don't want to deal with this. Because it's not in your makeup to deal with this. And I'm not saying that you can't deal with it. I think it takes practice. But I think there's only so much practice you can do before it gets into you. And I think that we have to realize our self-worth and understand who we are and our own self-belief and our self-esteem when we go into a confrontation situation. When we walk into a situation that will have some sort of confrontation, we have to pretty much realize and safeguard ourselves and understand that possibly there's a good probability that if you're not starting the confrontation and someone else is, that they're going to confront you and be confrontational. That confrontational might stress you out. That confrontation might make you fearful. That confrontation might make your stomach feel like it's churning 1,000,000 miles an hour. That confrontation may make you want to run and hide. Because the last thing you like to deal with is confrontation, right? And a lot of times when we don't like to deal with confrontation, we have a tendency of trying to get out of the argument as fast as possible without thinking about what's actually right for ourselves. We have a tendency of not looking at every different level. We have a tendency of not trying to figure out the next step. But instead, we just say, yeah, okay, whatever. I'll do whatever. I want to make this right. When in reality, what you're doing to yourself is really taking yourself out of the option, out of the equation, because you just want to end the confrontation. It's making you feel uncomfortable. You are not happy about the way you feel. You feel beaten down, unhappy, insecure, and overall pretty stressed out about the situation. And when we make choices that devalue our self-esteem and go against our self-respect, we do ourselves two injustices. Our first injustice is the obvious. We put ourselves down to a degree. We kind of like sabotage ourselves. But also in the process, we don't realize that we don't get the chance to see confrontation from a specific point of view. And what I mean is this. For all of us who don't like confrontation, the first thing we want to do is what? Run. Run away, get away from the confrontation. Move out of the way of the confrontation. We want to get out of there. We want to move. We want to go. We want to leave. But you know what we do when we do that, right? What happens when we run from confrontation is we never learn. We never learn from the confrontation. We get bullied. We get our lunch money taken from us. More than we even had and more than we ever owed. And, you know, you're surprised they don't add something else in there and take your clothes off from you, too. And you just go, here, take it all. Just take it. Let me get out of here. I got to go. And when we do that, what else happens? We lose we lose a little self-respect. But better yet, what happens next? We get hurt and we get angry. And we get angry not only at the bully that is used to bullying and getting their way, right? The bully who always gets their way. So, not only are we angry at the bully, but who are we most angry at? Yeah, you got it. Ourself. We're most angry at ourselves because we didn't step up to the plate and stand up to the bully. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? Because all we had to say to the bully was, no, you're not right. And no, I'm not going to agree to that. And better yet, let's do that on my terms instead of your terms. We try to do it on your terms, and you don't listen to a word I say. So that's never going to work. But a lot of times we jump to conclusions, we accept what the bully is offering, and we agree and we sign the dotted line, and then what happens? We're mad at ourselves. I can't believe I've done this. I can't believe I agreed to that unfair deal. And you know what's so funny about it is the bully knew that the deal was unfair because it was orchestrated unfair. It was created to be unfair. Okay? And they just want to see what deal you're going to take. Because that's what it gets down to, right? What deal are you going to take? What's the magic number? What's the magic agreement? What's the job? What's the salary? What's the magic number that you're going to take? What's the magic agreement? And it's interesting because a lot of times we do ourselves a disservice by not getting into the confrontation. We do ourselves a disservice and we end up getting angry at ourselves. And that directly relates back to the fact that our relationship with ourselves is the most important relationship we have. And if it is the most important relationship that we have, we don't want to be mad at ourselves. Okay? Because that's our most important relationship. That's the thing, that's the person, that's the body we got to live inside of day in and day out. Understand how we tick and why we tick. Look at ourselves in the mirror and accept it. And I think there comes a time where some of us need to begin to forgive ourselves from past incidents that we've done against ourselves. You can forgive people that have gone against you. You don't have to forget. Now, let me explain this, because a lot of times people they don't realize that forget and forgive are two different things. Okay? They're two different things. Okay, to forgive is to accept, to let go. You know, I forgive you. I still love you as a person, but I might not love or like or even accept your choices or your demands. But I can still give you a hug because as a human being, I care about you. I'll forgive you for your trespasses, but I won't forget. Because I've forgotten before in the past, and I know some of us have done that, where you forget what people have done. And you forget what people have done because it's easy to forget and to forgive. Because a lot of times people forgive it, and then they forget that it happened, they let it go, And what happens? We normally find ourselves in that situation again, going through the same process. Because you're not supposed to forget it, because, things actually kind of rotate in a circular type manner, right? They're circular. Life is circular. Time is honestly circular in a way as well, because everything really is happening at the same time. But this is not a science class today at this exact juncture, but we can get into physics and quantum physics and all that later on down the road. However, think about it. A lot of times we have a tendency of forgiving somebody for something that they've done. And that is godly, and that's cool. But then at the same time, we usually have that forgive and forget at the same place. And so the next thing you know is it's either with that person or with somebody else that we're dealing with the same BS. The same thing happens again and again. We're never learning from it because we're constantly forgetting it. Now, what about the stuff that we do to ourselves, right? Oh, man, what about the stuff we do to ourselves? What about the way we treat ourselves? What about the situations we find ourselves in? Isn't that interesting? And how many times have we finally forgiven ourselves over the bonehead things that we've done, only to fall prey to doing it again? Because we forgot. We forgot. We forgot how we got in that predicament in the first place. We forgot, but you know what? We got to stop forgetting so we don't fall into the same problematic situation again.
Hey, bada 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 bada, so bada. Hey, bada 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 bada, so bada. Kennedy, so bada.
And we got to step up to the plate and look at ourselves in the mirror and realize that yes, indeed, the relationship that we have with ourselves is very important. It's monumental. And we realize that we have to do some personal work. We have to do some personal work in order to make for the best relationship. And it's true. It takes work. It takes time. Like anything, when you're getting good at something, right? So like anything, even when you were a kid, remember when you would ride your bike and, you got the training wheels taken off and you're riding around, and the more you rode, the better you got, right? That was just the way it is. The more you rode your bike, the better you got. The more you rode the skateboard, the better you got. The more you rode your motorcycle, the better you got. Think about it, your scooter, whatever it was. The more you ran, the better runner you became. The more you spoke in front of the public, the more public speaking you did, the better speaker and communicator that you become. And the same goes for personal work. The more personal work we do to better ourselves, the better we become. And I think it's interesting because, we see those shows on TV. I call it the Jerry Springer series. Those types of, and I'm not just picking on Jerry Springer here, okay? But I'm talking about the shows that are based on watching people with tormented lives and issues and problematic situations and looking at them and going, well, at least my life is better than that. And I hope so. But I have to ask the question, why compare? I find in my practice that a lot of people are constantly comparing themselves to other people. I find that they don't feel happy or elated or special. They feel lesser than, not as good, probably shouldn't be happy, don't have as much, aren't at the same level on a career or a personal basis. I have female clients that come into my office often who complain about how another friend of theirs is getting married and they're not. About how another friend of theirs is having a second or third baby and they can't get pregnant. And they don't know what's wrong with them. Some clients that are single, that stay up all night long on social media, trolling their friends' profiles and finding people getting married or engaged and being sad and depressed all night over that and having a difficult time sleeping because they never know if they're going to meet the right person. I have clients that come into my office that work their butt off, that are good, strong people, who see people every day who have more money and more things than they do, and they question their self-value. I have clients that come into my office that see couples that they know that seem to be the picture-perfect couple, and they just wish that they could be a quarter of that. And they don't feel like they can live up to it. And what I'm saying right now is that you'll never live up to those people. You're never going to live up to them, and it's not because they're better than you. It's not at all. It's not at all. You know what it is? Is that you put them on a pedestal, and you see only what you want to see. You see only what you want to see. We make decisions about things from its outside look, its outside perspective. We assume that some people have it way better than we do. Think about it. And the more we assume that, the lesser we feel about our own life. And so, what I'm telling you right now, and it's something to live by for the rest of your life, is begin to realize that, yes, from the outside, everything will probably look good, especially when you're looking at things through colored glasses that make you feel as though you are living at a deficit compared to the people you're comparing yourself to. When we begin to do our personal work on ourselves, we begin to realize that comparing ourselves is not the way to roll. Instead, it's quite the opposite. When we stop comparing ourselves, we find happiness. When we stop comparing ourselves, we realize the value that we have. When we stop comparing ourselves, we understand that we are good people and that it's not about who they are. It's not about what they do or what we see that they have or the life that they seem to be living. It's how can we make ours better? What can we do day after day, week after week, year after year to make our lives better, more fruitful, more happy, more enjoyable? And sometimes for some people, especially for some of my clients, I would say about 30% of my clients have to lay off of social media altogether. Because in order for them to begin to do the personal work and to stop the comparison of themselves to others, they have to stop looking at the pictures on Instagram and Facebook that are telling the story that they are buying into. When we want to see things a certain way, we buy into things a certain way. We see situations the way we want to see them. No different than that. We only acknowledge what we want to see. And you know, it was interesting. I was talking to a client the other day, actually 2 days ago. And they said, hey, they go, why is it that sometimes when we see the truth, we try to unsee it? And I said, that's a very good question. And they said, why is that? Why is that? Why is it that when you see something that's not supposed to be, instead of accepting that, you don't accept that and you try to unsee it? Why is that? And what I'm saying tonight is that a lot of times we create these thought processes in our head. We create stories in our head of what other people are doing and what successful people are doing and how we can get to that next level and what we need to do to be better. And after you listen to the show, I hope that you take some of these ideas and put them into your day-to-day life, because I want to begin talking right now about the personal work you can do to begin to see yourself realistically, with hope and understanding, and be able to understand where you are at this exact time. You know, the first thing that's so important when we begin to do our own personal work on ourselves is to write down the things that we hold against ourselves. To write down the things that we think we've done that are stupid, that were not the smartest thing to do, that may have held us back, that we feel as though we didn't choose wisely. And I'd like to look at those choices and understand why we made those choices and why I'm asking this and why I'd like you to begin doing this. Get yourself a journal. I'm sure you have a notebook sitting around the house. You don't need to go buy anything. I'm sure you have a pen or pencil. And open up that journal. And it would be great to have one that doesn't have a bunch of other writings in it. Or go to the first blank page and make sure that everything else is blank after that. And start this journal. If you can think of something that just recently happened that you are unhappy about. And that goes a long way. And what I'm saying is that when we make choices that we are unhappy about, that has implications. Those implications directly relate to how we feel about ourselves. Okay? So, for example, if we don't believe in ourselves, or if we don't feel as good as, or we feel lesser than someone else, what might be some actions, reactions we might do in our own life that we can see that exact option spotlighted? Let me give you an example. So I have a friend of mine that has low self-esteem, and she feels lesser than most women around her. And she feels as though other women are better, more equipped, smarter, prettier, have better options than her. And we were talking one day, and I found out that in her company, there was an opening that she could apply for. And I was very stoked for her. I was very happy for her because I knew that she was definitely qualified. Not only qualified, she was like the only qualified person that was working there that could really do it. And it wasn't a huge movement, but it was a movement from part-time to full-time. And it was better hours for her. Okay? Better hours, full-time, and benefits. Yay, you got all that. It's a trifecta. And so I found out about the opening, and I waited a couple of days because I knew that she would probably tell me that she applied for the job and this and that. And I was looking forward to her telling me. And so finally, like 2 or 3 or 4 days passed, and I'm just like, man, I guess she's not going to tell me. And I was like, I was interested. I mean, I am a Gemini. I want to know, inquiring minds want to know. I want to know. And I asked her, I was like, so when are you going to apply for that job? Or, hey, did you already apply, and how did it go? And she's like, no, I didn't apply for it. And I said, why not? Well, you remember I applied 6 months ago for that other position, and I totally got overlooked. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, so I'm just not even going to bother this time. I mean, they're just going to overlook me. And I didn't want to argue because I didn't want to make her feel bad. But I was thinking in my head, oh my gosh, the job that she had applied for earlier was something a little out of her skill set. And on top of that, there were 2 other people in line that really had seniority and had more experience. And it was just kind of the way it was going to be. However, this particular job was the next step to where she was, and it was just the next obvious step. And I said, okay, so you're not thinking about applying at all? I mean, what about just putting your name in the hat and seeing what happens? I mean, worst comes to worst, you don't get it. And she's like, I just couldn't take another blow to my ego. I can't deal with that. I just can't deal with that. It really, really hurt my feelings. And I said, okay, well, I can't sit there and argue with someone's feelings. I can't sit there and argue with them being honest with me. But I knew in my heart of hearts that, unfortunately, her self-esteem was low, And she was basing her self-esteem on not being chosen for the previous job 6 months ago, right? And for most of us, because we're not in the situation right now, it's kind of obvious, right? And so I would have to say about a month went by, and they were going through the interview process, and they ended up hiring another employee that was working with her that she had actually trained, that had less experience, that was not as good at the time. I mean, not that the person's not good, just not at the time. But it was really the only option they had because she didn't apply. And I remember her coming into my office saying, I can't believe so-and-so got the job. I mean, my God. I trained them. I mean, I can't believe this. How did this happen? And I didn't really want to hurt her feelings again, but I knew that the truth had to be said. If she was a client of mine, if she was a patient of mine, I would have to tell her the same thing. And I asked her a question. I said, why did you not apply? Because it wasn't worth it, and they would have walked away, and they would have just overlooked me anyway. They did it last time. They'll just do it again. I go, okay, that's an assumption, one. Not to say that they wouldn't overlooked her the other time, but that's an assumption. I said, why else? She goes, well, I got sad, and it really hurt my feelings that I was overlooked last time. I was like, so you were emotionally invested, and did you also connect your value with not getting the job? And she goes, well, yeah. Yeah, I was down for a while. It hurt my feelings. And I said, and that's why you didn't apply. And she goes, yeah. And I go, and now you're mad. Not so much that she got the job, because you're not really mad at her. You like her. She's not a bad person. You're not mad at the person that hired, but you're what? You're mad at yourself. You're angry at yourself. You're angry at yourself because you didn't want to deal with a possible pain situation because you placed your self-esteem, your self-belief, and your self-value on an outside situation. On a situation of not being hired for a previous job 6 months ago, you didn't apply for what seemed to be the obvious step. And it's the reason why maybe the freaking job before that didn't work out. I mean, things do happen for a reason. And it's very interesting. And she was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I said, well, next time, how are we going to react differently? Because that's what I want you right now writing down in your notebook is, when was the last time that you self-sabotage yourself? And that's what self-sabotage is. I just explained it. When was the last time and why? And that's one of the first things that you have to overcome in all of your day-to-day life, because the way that we treat ourselves, the way that we see our value, the way we value ourselves, directly relates to how we value others and directly relates to how we see the world. And when we begin to value ourselves higher, we make better choices for ourselves. We make better choices for ourselves, and we end up having a better outcome because we make better choices that stick with us. And we're able to learn from our problems. I mean, think about it. It's not the end of the world for her. And since then, she's gotten a better job and things are good, but it took a while. And so just because you sabotage yourself doesn't mean that it's over, but you just got to stop doing it. It's a cycle. And I think if you look back through your lifetime, you'll realize how many times you've actually done it to yourself. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm saying. And that's what's so important, is once we realize that and stop that cycle, we can then begin to live our true life. Because we're no longer putting boundaries. We're no longer putting roadblocks up from our own success. I mean, life can be as hard as it is with outside sources and outside situations and people beating down on you or bullying you or trying to get you to do something or not have your best at heart or trying to whatever, bamboozle you, for God's sakes. But in the end, we have to have that self-belief, that acknowledgement within ourselves that we are doing the right thing, and to have that belief system so that we can put ourselves out there, so that we can allow ourselves to be successful, so we can allow ourselves the time that we need to realize, to understand, to accept a situation, or to argue a situation, or to find a different situation. It's all about us, and it's within ourselves that self-belief, that self-esteem, that self-love is within ourselves. It's within ourselves because, I hear a lot of times on radio and TV and songs and everything about, oh, now that I found you, baby, my life is great and I'm happy and I'm whole and I'm this, that. Well, you should be a whole person already, okay? You got to do that on your own. That's why a lot of relationships are codependent, because people haven't found their own self-value and their self-worth. Codependency is based on the fact that I don't feel worthy on my own. I get you as my girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, or wife, and now I feel more worthy because I got you, baby. I got you, baby. You sit there and you look at men that have, the trophy wife, and everybody talks about the trophy wife. Everybody got to put down somebody that obviously has less self-esteem than they do. Isn't that funny? Oh, look at that guy over there with the Ferrari. What is he making up for, huh? What do you think? Yeah. See, everybody's got to put down something because everybody's got self-esteem issues to some degree. And some men and some women don't have trophy spouses. But think about it. A lot of times they use their spouse to make them feel better about themselves. And that's important to think about. And a lot of times people use their cars, their houses, their friends even, their money to make them feel better about themselves. But the thing is that self-esteem and personal belief is just with you. Just you. Picture yourself naked. Just you. Naked, standing, alone. You. You don't have to be cold and alone. Nothing like that. Or cold and stressed out. You're just alone. Naked. Just you. No money. No Ferrari. No dogs, cats, animals, babies, spouses, friends. No companies, corporations. It's about you. And once you're able to isolate down just to that and realize the value you have, that's when it's a game changer. That's when your life changes for the better.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
If you can find value in yourself on your own, no strings attached, nobody involved, it changes your entire life. This is the truth. This is the true perspective. No BS. Always more answers, less questions on perspectives. Once you're able to love yourself and to see the value that you have in yourself without things and items and stuff and people and all that stuff, you figured it out. You figured out what this lifetime is about. It's about service. It's about helping. It's about loving. But first and foremost, we have to do service. We have to help. And we have to love ourselves. And if we can do the service and the help of our love of ourselves and really get to know ourselves, guess what? We understand others. We're able to have the compassion to understand others. And we might not agree. Okay, so this is the key, is once you really get to understand yourself, love yourself, find the compassion, do all this stuff, understand it, you might not agree with what a lot of people are doing. But it's not about that. You don't have to agree. Better yet, the cool thing is that you find love for them. You find love for them as human beings. You might not like everything they do, but you love what they do. And you begin to find the love within you, and even more so, you begin to gravitate to other people who have found their self-value. Funny enough, people who have found real self-value in a real honest manner. Okay? In a real honest manner. Not in I'm a better than other people manner. Not in a narcissistic manner. No, not that at all. Because remember, the I'm better than everybody and the narcissistic attitude is based on someone that honestly does not love themselves, does not see value in themselves. Actually, quite the opposite. People who are extremely narcissistic are very upset. They have very low self-esteem, and they hide it with that outside, boisterous, egotistical attitude. And so once you begin to find that self-love and you keep working on that and you work on your self-compassion and you learn about yourself and you service and you help others as well, you end up growing and your heart grows and you end up growing through that heart space, not just the mind. You're not just having the mind make these decisions based on whatever. You feel your decisions and you end up moving away from things and people who are not really aligned with that thought process, that heart process, right? The heart process. And you start moving from that to people who are. People who actually get it. And as you surround yourself by more and more people who actually get it, you begin to get even more and more plugged in. Because you keep raising frequencies. You keep adding to your life. You keep bettering it. You keep maximizing it. You're not having to go back down to lower frequencies and trying to build back up. It's like sometimes when you deal with lower frequency issues, it feels like you're down in the basement. You were on the rooftop deck on the 4th floor, but now you're in the basement trying to get back up to the 1st floor. Suggestion: spend time around people who are compassionate, who are honest, who are loving, who are there to help, to be of service. Check out ashleyburgess.com. Check out my website at ashleyburges.com. ashleyburgess.com. There's a wealth of information, blogs, past shows on there, as well as there's a contact tab. You can click on that contact tab and send me a message because I want to hear from you. Whether you want to talk about ideas for shows, whether you would be a great person to interview as somebody that would be great to talk about purpose or instinct or the business that they're in or the problems and the situations that you're facing. If you're facing situations in life that you need help and direction, I'd love to talk with you. If you'd like to work with me as me being your therapist or your life coach, I'd definitely like to talk to you as well. I just started doing new Skype meetings, which is really cool, and it's really effective. And so you don't have to live where I live, and you don't even have to drive to see me. We can Skype, and I'm getting a lot out of it, and the clients are speaking highly about it. Check out the AshleyBurgessNetwork.com as well. AshleyBurgessNetwork.com is 24 hours, 7 days a week, just Perspectives with Ashley Burgess. Stay tuned. I'll have a great show for you soon as possible. And Perspectives Heroes, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back this time. Be back in 3 shakes.
I like Perspectives with Ashley Burgess, but I prohibit my workers from listening to it.